Alright everyone, believe it or not, I've actually got a new shirt for a change. We got to talk about the UK first today because our own Tommy Robinson is now at odds with our own Nige over there, I guess. Because Tommy Robinson has been appointed to an advisory position by the leader of UKIP. Nigel Farage does not appear to be too happy about that, but you've got to understand, Nigel Farage is no longer the leader of UKIP. Now I think Robinson can't actually become a member for some reason. I'm not sure, like a registered member. It's funny to think about actually like signing off papers saying, yes, I'm a member of a political party. I never quite understood it. It's like even here, like I've never registered Republican or Democrat. Here in Vermont, you can vote in either primary regardless. You can just take whichever ballot you want. There's also a progressive ballot in the primaries, separate from just the Democratic one, even though they're listed the same for the purposes of voting in the general. It's a really weird system. And no, you don't have to show ID because the constable or whatever will be there and they know, who lives in the town, so no problem. We don't have a problem with voter fraud here. Bust people in and see what happens. But I think, here's what I think about this. Tommy Robinson is a lightning rod for criticism. Lightning rods for criticism are also lightning rods for attention. I think that the reason why this is being done is primarily to buff up UKIP's image as something more than just a Brexiteer movement. Right now, Brexit is basically useless. Like in the preliminary deal that I guess Spain is threatening to veto anyway, which means like fuck everyone. They're talking about dragging on the negotiations over the final deal till 2022. 24 more years of non-stop Brexit negotiation. What's the point? And if it gets torpedoed, Theresa May, even whether she steps down or not, if she's still there, she's going to keep it going. She's not just going to trigger hard Brexit and throw up her hands and say, okay, well, we're going to burn this whole fuck to the ground and then rebuild it. That's not going to happen because she doesn't want a Brexit. She was never a Brexiteer anyway. A lot of the people that are negotiating to leave the EU over there are actually pro-EU and don't want to leave at all. So they're trying to sabotage. It's as simple as that. Nigel Farage, I like him as a person. I think he's charismatic, he's well-spoken, I think he's principled. But I think he's wrong about Tommy Robinson. Him standing in the way of this and saying, well, basically, we must disavow, I'm very upset over this, Tommy Robinson is hateful. No, he's not hateful. Criticism of Islam is not hateful. You can call it that, but it's not. And I think Farage is trying to get a little bit of opportunism in here, too. He's trying to basically, I think, cast himself as well. I represent the original gangsters, the moderate side of this movement, and now they're trying to bring in all the Tommy Robinsons, and they're like scary and stuff. Criticism of Islam should be considered perfectly acceptable, tolerated. It's just like when Jack Dorsey criticizes the Hindu caste system, and then people are talking about it being politically incorrect. Fuck political correctness. No, people should be able to criticize whatever they want, especially religion. Religion is a choice that people make. Fuck religion. Who cares? And the number two, him talking about the police, like one of the Vice News articles, like, well, Tommy Robinson is now going to be advising UKIP on rape gangs, in quotations, of course, which don't actually exist because he's a horrible Islamophobic conspiracy theorist, criticizing the UK's police for selectively ignoring certain crimes because they feel they are being pressured. Whether it's true or not, they feel they're being pressured by society and by certain political elements within the UK into not talking about them because of the demographics of that type of crime. That is not racist. It's not even a race. Over there, they say like Asian or something. Like, okay, anyone from this whole fucking continent. White Russia, same as someone from Japan. Someone from India, same as someone from the southern Arabian coast. And it's very, very strange how this works in the system of the UK. But UKIP has never been a racialistic party. Like Tommy Robinson's not like an ethno-nationalist. No, he's kind of a civic nationalist. He's really more of a nativist than anything. Farage isn't even that. Farage has certain views that are on the left. People have talked about Farage as far right, Farage as evil and bigoted and extreme. What are you talking about? He wants more immigration to the UK and he's worried there aren't enough people coming in to replace the aging demographics. He's not some sort of ethno-nationalist. The thing is, Farage shouldn't be making the mistake that a lot of people on the right have made, and he should know better because he's not part of the old neocon right. He's one of the former Tories over there, like they're equivalent to like the Romneys and the McCains here. Policy-wise, they're quite similar. They're conservative in name, but they don't do anything conservative. They're populistic sounding, but they're not really populist. The thing is, for decades, in both countries. And I know over there it was basically a split between the Labour and Liberal Democrats on the left, more or less, and the Tories, which stood in for what amounts to a so-called conservative movement there. The same thing happened here between the Republicans that weren't conservative for 30 years. Post-Reagan, the Republicans abandoned conservatism. And they had already partially abandoned it by the time of fucking JFK and being assassinated. At that time, they sort of bowed down before globalism. The Democrats supposedly are a liberal movement. They're not really liberal. Just like your labor movement over there. It's like, okay, we're going to raise taxes slightly, and we're not going to touch our national healthcare system that everyone constantly debates over. We're in the throes. The US and the UK are sort of kindred spirits right now as sort of the policies that are being discussed. Open borders versus protected borders. The healthcare system is a big thing, and then basically political correct, censorship-addled culture, and the old dying paradigm of the false right and the false left being embattled by actual people who are actually on the right or left, but aren't extreme. Here's what they worry about. All throughout the last decades, there have always been a handful of skinheads or communists or people like that are on the actual fringe right or left that have been attacking the establishment. To them, a Democrat, a Republican, a Tory, and a Labor member, they're all the same fucking shit. And they are all the same fucking shit. 90% of their views are basically the same. They have to dredge up silly-ass wedge issues in order to actually campaign. But now you have, in the technocratic era of the internet, the rise of ideologies that are not extreme, but they do differ from those other ideologies. You've got actual libertarianism. You've got, I would say, a quickly growing sentiment of civic nationalism all around the world, not just here in the West. Fuck, you get civic nationalism rising up in Africa, of all places. Now, and you also have the classically liberal core that's differentiated from maybe the more ANCAP-style libertarians, especially in the U.S. sense. That's why UKIP exists. UKIP is not extreme on many of its policies. What they've said is, hey, we don't want to be in the EU. It was a single fucking platform party, and they won despite never having had any significant political power. Nobody else wanted to join him at first. And Farage, I remember, even a decade ago, you'd hear about these rumblings over there about some crazy politician who drinks a lot and I think was a smoker and maybe still is, talking about how the UK should not be part of the EU. And at the time, of course, EU's doing fine. People are like, haha, look at this chucklehead here. He's talking about this sovereignty nonsense. We do have sovereignty within the context of being part of Europe. It's very funny. Tommy Robinson is part of the new wave of people that's even newer than the Nigel Farage sort of fronts around Europe and here in the United States. Like we have the Ron Paul sort of movement. That sort of died down. Now, it adds to the entire mix. There's still millions of people in this country that are libertarians in that sense. Others have gone off and vaguely dissociated their ideology. They become more classically liberal, like maybe skeptic, literal classical liberals, or a dedicated online skeptic community. Others have gone the civic nationalist way, and some have become identitarians. But to claim that Tommy Robinson is hateful and should be disavowed, or that it's problematic that he would be an unofficial advisor to the leader of a party that he can't technically join in a political capacity, what's wrong with him? He's an embattled journalist. He's a literal journalist. Isn't he employed by Rebel Media? A Canadian firm? Like a fairly large news firm? I know they lost a lot of their talent, but if they get Tommy Robinson on board, I guess everything's okay. And all the former Rebel News people, they're constantly headhunted after for deplatforming online, which is not a coincidence, by the way. I think some people are worried about the strategy there actually being quite good. Well, you look, they'll probably try to throw Tommy Robinson back in prison any day now for criticizing the police or the Crown, or he'll say the wrong thing about the Queen, and they'll say, well, to the dungeon, we're going to lock you in the Tower of London, we're going to bring back the guillotine and all that shit. That's about all. Peace out.